welcome along to today's video, where today I'm going to be reviewing Twice Upon a Time, Peter Capaldi's last story. And I suppose, if it's my one last time to use it...
Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi, I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
So yes, it was indeed the final Peter Capaldi story, and probably the last time I can, well, certainly the last time I can use that as the current Doctor, shall we say. Which is a bit sad, but let's get straight into this story. Well, I guess we should probably start at the beginning, which was the lovely opening sequence with the previously 709 episodes ago. Only Doctor Who could have a previously sort of intro that's 50 years ago, or 51 years ago, which is pretty crazy. And to have that on Christmas Day, I feel, could only really happen in an episode like this in Stephen and Peter's last episodes. To have classic footage from the 10th Planet, a Doctor Who episode from 51 years ago, on Christmas Day on BBC One, just is a little bit crazy, but they pulled it off absolutely fantastically. Those scene recreations I thought were brilliant, and the way that they sort of used the CGI to link or merge the two shots together from the old footage into the new, bringing the sort of 4:3 into 16:9 was just perfectly done. It was so neat and tidy, it was fantastic. I probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the recreated scenes from the 10th Planet, and certainly I know there was a lot more shot than was actually shown in the episode, so that was a little bit disappointing, but maybe in the sort of deleted scenes or something on Twice Upon a Time, the DVD release or something, we might get some of those scenes, which would be nice to see, but we could have done with a little bit more of it in the episode. And well, I guess this brings me on to the first big part of this episode, which is the First Doctor. He's back in the story, and I think he was played absolutely fantastically by David Bradley in this episode. Of course, we'd seen him previously in An Adventure in Space and Time, and he did a very good job of it there, but he was more playing William Hartnell than playing the First Doctor. But I thought in this episode he really kind of brought out all the qualities that we saw in the First Doctor way back in the 60s, and really, it wasn't quite an impersonation, but it was certainly a very good portrayal of that Doctor. Of course, one of the biggest gripes of this episode was the casual sexism of some of his lines, which I will absolutely say were completely terrible, ridiculous, shouldn't have been in there. And it felt like Stephen and Mark were just having a little bit of a joke around with it when it really should not have been there. So yes, there's no way defending that, that is just terrible. But everything else about his character was really, really nicely explored in this episode. And I thought it was also interesting to come up with the idea of having him not wanting to regenerate, which we had never seen before. We never knew about this concept that the original Doctor didn't want to change. And I think it's quite nicely played out in this episode, and we sort of really see the vulnerability of the First Doctor when he sort of says he's afraid of regenerating. Of course, he's never done it before, he doesn't know what it feels like, what happens. He just doesn't know anything, he doesn't understand this properly, so naturally he's going to be afraid of what's to come when he's essentially dying for the very first time. So I thought, yeah, David Bradley did such a great job of putting that out, and I think other than those sexist lines, Stephen did a great job of writing the First Doctor as well. And of course he had some brilliant moments with the 12th Doctor. Ignoring the sexist lines in there were still some great comedy moments when sort of the First Doctor showed that sort of with his wit and with his thought he was able to kind of outdo the Doctor and the 12th Doctor and the stupid sunglasses and all this kind of thing. There was just lots of great moments, which you always get when two Doctors meet each other, but it was just, I think, very interesting and nice to have that little twist of it being a regeneration story for both of them and not just your normal multi-Doctor story, as it were. And of course, as it's Peter Capaldi's last episode, we've got to talk about the 12th Doctor in this episode, who is absolutely fantastic. He really is the sort of the main character of this story. It's all about the 12th Doctor, as you would expect, but I think he really does a phenomenal job of kind of fighting off the regeneration and portraying what it's like to kind of have to die again all over and over again. But he really sort of understands that towards the end and finally accepts it in that wonderful speech towards the end, which I'll come on to a little bit later on. But yes, I think Peter really did put in a brilliant final performance. Now, of course, one of the other major things is the actual plot of this story, which is a funny one and is maybe a little bit lacking. Given that it's not an evil plan, as the Doctor says, it's just someone trying to help, really. Which is a bit unusual for Doctor Who and a little bit different, but it felt like really this story wasn't about the plot. As much as there was a plot there about this idea, well, he wanted to talk about the idea of memories, did Stephen Moffat, I think, and obviously nicely linking into Clara at the end. But the idea of testimony, that they're going to they snatch you at the end of your life and create a duplicate of you with all your memories in that, so that you can still sort of meet your favourite dead people and all that kind of thing, which is a little bit strange, but I can kind of see the nice idea behind it, and certainly it isn't an evil plan at all, as we learn. So that's quite interesting. I mean, it's more about sort of the two Doctors realising they need to regenerate this story than it is about that plot. It's more just a kind of subplot there that's a way of bringing back Bill to some degree and linking to this whole concept of memories and everything as well. So I think you've got to look past this plot line to a large degree, just because it isn't really that important to the story. It's not really what this story is about. Of course, one of the other main characters in this story is the Captain, played by Mark Gatiss, who is actually I guess maybe a more interesting character than you would initially think. Although he is just a 1914 army soldier who's about to die, he also gives some very nice little speeches about that sort of idea of having accepted his death. He was ready to die at that point, he knew it was going to happen and that was fine. But as soon as he's given some hope, he suddenly doesn't want to die anymore. He sort of has a little bit of a way out by being pulled out of time at this point, that he sort of realises, actually I'm not ready for this anymore, don't want to die. And it was a sort of nice parallel to the Doctor's almost, I think, and was just, yeah, a little bit more of an interesting character than maybe expected. And those were some wonderful scenes we saw on that World War I battlefield, of course, the 1914 truce. That sort of, as the Doctor says, that human miracle of the two sides coming together on Christmas Day to have fun, to enjoy each other's company, to play football, to sort of chat to each other and everything, and then go off that evening to shoot each other again, which is a sort of happy and a sad moment there, but it's sort of a great opportunity also for the Doctor to save one last life before he has to regenerate and save that captain's life, who of course just happens to be a rather important captain to the Doctor in terms of being a Lethbridge Stewart. The other significant sort of return to this episode has got to be Bill's return. She's back for this story one last time, and it's nice that although she's back, it doesn't detract from her ending at all. This is completely separate because it's able to almost, this idea of this testimony company bringing back people's memories almost enabled Bill to return for this story. And I think it's quite nice to have her there. Of course, she's been the 12th Doctor's companion for the last series and was a very good character, but it also sort of fits quite well, I think, that she's almost convincing him that it is time, you do need to regenerate, come on, just do this. I feel the 12th Doctor almost needed her there just for her to push him along into actually regenerating, which I thought worked really well. And then towards the end of this episode, all the lovely sort of cameo style appearance, of course, the completely kind of unexpected appearance of Rusty the Dalek returning, and maybe not an obvious candidate for a returning character in this episode, but I think worked quite nicely into the plot. Although it was mainly just about finding the database that he's got in his mind, I felt it was quite a good character to bring against the 12th Doctor, because of course he was right at the very beginning. We met Rusty the Dalek when he kind of helped us almost understand who the Doctor was, or that he was a good Dalek. And that was just sort of, I felt, maybe bringing the Doctor's arc full circle almost, meeting the first character that really helped him start to understand what sort of Doctor he was and start him on that journey of understanding. So I thought it was quite nice to meet him at the very end as well. Then of course we had to have the wonderful cameo of Clara Oswald in this episode. She had to be in it. I was desperate to see her for one last 30-second cameo, and she got it. Although the CGI, and you can clearly see it's been green screened on, she's clearly been green screened into that, and it doesn't look perfect because you can tell they weren't filmed at the same time, unfortunately. But it still is a nice little scene, and I'm fairly sure that the Merry Christmas Doctor line is pulled out of a previous episode, but certainly those other few lines are definitely Jenna's lines more recently, because you can tell that she's got that slightly more posh English accent now because she's been playing Victoria for 2.5 years. It sort of comes so far in her accent that she's got so used to doing that I think she almost can't get away from it fully anymore. So she almost sounds a little bit less like Clara Oswald, a little bit more like Victoria, the Queen of England, which it's just a quite sort of little funny nod, I thought, to that. But it was a lovely little scene which of course restores the Doctor's memories of Clara as well, and kind of puts everything back as it should have been at the very end, very end. But I still don't think it sort of decreases the impact of Hellbent, because the Doctor still had to go through that long period without those memories of Clara, and only at the very end does he get them back. And then we get one last appearance of Nardole as well, which I thought was quite nice, just to have that final TARDIS team of Nardole, Bill with the Doctor there, and one final hug to say goodbye. I thought was just a lovely little moment to end on. And then of course the Doctor has to regenerate alone. But wow, that scene, this final scene of the 12th Doctor, the regeneration scene, is just absolutely fantastic. I think it really is a phenomenally well-crafted, well-written, well-directed, well-acted scene. Everything about it just works so perfectly, I think. It really feels like we've come so far in the 12th Doctor's arc that the Doctor is able to set out who the Doctor is for the next Doctor, which I think is brilliant, because you look back to the beginning of Series 8 when the Doctor didn't know who he was. He didn't really understand who he was meant to be and what sort of was he a hero, was he a good man, a bad man, all this kind of thing. He didn't really understand. And so I think it's really, really nice at the very end that he does fully understand who the Doctor is, who his Doctor is, and he sets that out for the next Doctor, saying never be cruel, never be cowardly, be kind, all these kind of things that just sort of really that he's been able to understand over his tenure of who he actually is. And maybe that'll mean that we get a 13th Doctor who very quickly is assured of herself and knows who she is and what sort of Doctor she is. So I thought that was a very nice way of bringing the Doctor's arc full circle for the 12th Doctor. And just some wonderful and lovely lines in that last scene. That sort of idea about only the children can hear the name of the Doctor, I thought was quite sort of a little bit fairy tale and poetic, but also quite nice, and I think was apparently inspired by a comment Peter made in the press screening of the pilot, I think it was, to a sort of little fan who sort of asked about the Doctor's name, and he said that only the little children are able to hear it when everything's right, only the children can hear it. And that idea that Doctor Who is at its heart a children's show, although it's a family show and so many people of all ages love it, it still has that huge child's fan base. So I thought that was quite a nice sort of nod to the children watching, and all those sort of young children who are huge fans of Peter Capaldi and the 12th Doctor, sort of giving them that nice little special moment right at the end to say you're the special ones, you're the ones who can hear the Doctor's name. I thought that was just a lovely way for Peter to go out. And then that final few lines, laugh hard, run fast, be kind, Doctor, I let you go, is just a brilliant way to finish it off. And he's sort of, at the very end, willing to let the next Doctor come in and take over. He's finally giving up his Doctor and is ready to change, I think. It takes such a long time for him. He almost has that grace period where he kind of tries to fight it off, tries to understand, but at the very end, he is ready. And that one last low-key, heartbreaking line was that one when he says, well, one last lifetime won't kill anyone, well, except me. And I'm just like, oh no, please, no, you don't have to die. Why can't you just stay for another series, please, Peter? But it wasn't to be, of course. And then in massive explosions and plumes of golden energy, Jodie Whittaker appears as the 13th Doctor in a hugely exciting moment. And I think her first scene was a little masterpiece there. I mean, I think I might do a separate video about this, sort of breaking down that scene, because the cinematography and direction is incredible on that scene. The sort of the way they've used the different shots in there, that lovely little POV shot of the kind of disorientated Doctor trying to understand what's going on at the moment, I thought has never been done to Doctor Who before and was absolutely brilliant. And then all it needed was that one line, oh, brilliant, to sort of say, I'm a woman now and this is fantastic. And then we're thrown into a massive cliffhanger with the TARDIS blowing up and Jodie falling out of the TARDIS. And what's going to happen next. It was just the perfect way, I think, to finish this episode. But interesting that we got probably the least indication we've ever had to the new Who of what the new Doctor's going to be like, because she had one little line which didn't really tell us anything. So clearly they are still trying to keep it very much under wraps what sort of Doctor she's going to be like and how she's going to play this character. And it left it obviously very open-ended that she's fallen out of the TARDIS and is plunging to Earth. Spoiler alert, probably that's Sheffield that we see on the right, because apparently there's been some filming going on where it's at least set in Sheffield. So that'll be interesting. Of course, she's from up north, she'll fit in quite well up there, I think. So yes, I think this was a marvellous episode. It was a very, very fitting finale for Stephen Moffat and for Peter Capaldi. Probably for Murray Gold as well. The music was... there was a lot of reused music, there's no doubt about that, but there was some very good themes in there, and it was nice to hear a few of the old themes again. Certainly the sort of Return of the Doctor's theme when we see the 13th Doctor for the first time, I thought kind of gave that sense of mystery that's always a very kind of enigmatic piece of music, I think, and really sort of brings out the mystery of the Doctor and kind of set up that this is a mysterious new change, a new character, but it's also still the Doctor. This is the Doctor's theme. It is still the same character, even if she's some interesting new incarnation of it. So I thought that was very nicely used there, and yeah, there were just a few very nice pieces of music throughout it. So if it is Murray Gold's last episode, I've got to say thank you so much for 12 years of amazing music. But if it's not, then I can't wait to hear some more of it. And the final shout out has got to go to Rachel Talalay for the amazing direction of this episode. She, for me, is 100% the best New Who, or the best Doctor Who director we've ever had in the show. And I really, really hope that Chris brings her back for Series 11 or in the future, because she just has such vision and such brilliant ideas of how to bring the show to life. Even when there's not that many action scenes going on, she still just sort of brings it out brilliantly. Of course, those amazing shots during the Regeneration scene are so fantastic as well. She just produces so many iconic Doctor Who shots, I think, from episodes. So I sort of say that's absolutely amazing. I hope she comes back. But sadly, guys, that's it. That is the end of the Peter Capaldi era. That's the end of the Stephen Moffat era. That's the end of Doctor Who in 2017. And for a while, we're probably not going to get Series 11 until September or October next year. So it's going to be a long old wait until we see the start of a brand new era where everything is new and everything is different. But it's been a fun time of these last few years, whether it be just the Peter Capaldi era but the Stephen Moffat era as well. And I've got a few videos coming up on the channel over the next few days looking back sort of longer term over the Stephen Moffat era and everything that worked and didn't in that era, because it's been a huge part of Doctor Who. He has been the main man of Doctor Who since 2009 essentially, so it's really something to look at. But there we go, guys, that was my review of Twice Upon a Time, a fitting finale. Maybe not the best Doctor Who story ever, but a very, very good finale for Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What did you think of Twice Upon a Time? Did you think it was a great finale for the 12th Doctor? Did you think the story was really good, or did you think it was a bit lacking in places? What did you think of the First Doctor's sexism comments, but also the First Doctor in general as David Bradley? Did you think he did a very good job of portraying him, or was it a bit lacking as well? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. But other than that, guys, remember to like this video, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you again very, very soon from the video. Goodbye.